He didn't have movie star looks like Burt Reynolds or the rock and roll flamboyance of Elton John. Instead, he wore granny glasses and he sported a Dutch boy haircut. But in spite of his golly gosh darn image, he became a bona fide star, performing songs that America could truly relate to. Coming up, the rise of a military brat and the song that transformed him into one of the most popular cultural icons of the entire 70s. It's a song that everyone loves, even if some won't admit it. And it was actually banned on radio stations. People thought it was a drug song. Cool story coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you remember every little scratch on your old vinyls, even when you hear that song today, because it's just kind of tattooed on your brain, you're going to dig this channel of music nostalgia. Make sure that you subscribe below right now. Click that big red button and then click the bell so that you always get the interviews and the stories and the videos. We also have a Patreon that helps us keep it a daily channel. Check that out. We have more content there. So it's time for another edition of our series, The New Standards. This is a show that takes an in-depth look into songs that truly transcend genre, a decade, and fads. Songs that are truly monumental touchstones in our culture and in our society. Take me home, country road. So I was at a Sam Hunt concert recently with my wife, who's a fan. More of a rock guy, of course. But near the end of his set, he broke into the chorus of John Denver's Take Me Home Country Roads. And there was like 20,000 people singing along to every word at the top of their lungs. I just remembered thinking, this is such a great moment that would make John Denver really proud. Now let's get this out of the way right up front. I love John Denver. I don't care what anybody says. He's one of the greatest singer-songwriters of his time. He had one of the purest voices ever. Most people that rip on his music, I think they secretly adore it. How could you not? I thought a lot about John Denver after that concert and how his music has survived him. As many of you in the POR community know, one of the first things I ask an artist that I'm conversing with is, what was the moment that kicked open the door to their minds and made them want to pursue music? I just love to hear about those pivotal moments that changed their lives forever, that made them want to pursue it. Now, for John Denver, perhaps his most pivotal life-changing moment happened when he visited Colorado for the very first time, and he fell in love with the magic of the Rocky Mountains. Born in the summer of his 27th year. Henry John Deutschendorf Jr., he grew up in a military family. He was what they call a military brat. His father, Lieutenant Colonel Henry Deutschendorf Sr., he was an officer in the U.S. Air Force that moved his family from base to base from Roswell, New Mexico, where young Henry was born, to Tucson, Montgomery, Alabama, and then Fort Worth, Texas. Henry Jr. began his journey as a musician at age 11. It's when his grandmother gave him an acoustic guitar. He developed into a solid player, and he sang in local clubs. And in college, while attending Texas Tech in Lubbock, Henry's friend Randy Sparks, who was the founder of the New Christy Minstrels, convinced him that he needed to change his stage name. Deutschendorf would be really difficult to fit onto a marquee, very long there. And so Henry Deutschendorf became John Denver. Wish I could share all the love. John Denver was, of course, first and foremost a songwriter. While working on his debut demo in 1966, John included a song he penned called Babe, I Hate to Go. Once again, another pearl of wisdom from someone close was given to John Denver at this time when his producer, Milt Akin, recommended that John Denver change the title of this particular song to Leaving on a Jet Plane. Turned out to be the song that would generate national recognition for John Denver, in the record industry. The group Peter, Paul, and Mary, they of course found the tune on John's first album. It was called John Denver Sings, and recorded their own version of the song that became a #1 smash throughout the world in 1969. I'm leaving on a jet plane. The fourth studio album for John Denver is the record that really broke him across the nation. It featured the single, Take Me Home, Country Roads. The song was originally written by Bill Danoff and Taffy Nivert with the intention of selling this song for Johnny Cash to record. Danoff and Nivert were a husband and wife duo that made up half of the Starland vocal band, if you remember. Of course, we're talking about Afternoon Delight. Anyone out there?
Sky rockets in flight. Afternoon Delight.
Now, John Denver passionately fought for Take Me Home, Country Roads, and he actually collaborated with Danoff and Nivert to add a bridge for the track. And then he recorded a more refined version to include on his Poems, Prayers, and Promises LP. Now, Take Me Home, Country Roads was John Denver's first hit. It peaked at number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. That happened in 1971.
Country roads, take me home.
Denver's fifth album, Mary, that didn't yield any top 40 hits. The lead single from the record, Friends With You, that was a great song that rose to number 4 on the adult contemporary chart, but it actually stalled at number 47 on the Billboard Hot 100.
Friends, I will remember you.
Now, by the time his 6th studio LP was released, John Denver really built a reputation as an environmentalist. Fact is, he was one of the first to convey his position on environmental issues with the song Whose Garden Was This? John Denver's career began to flourish at about the time that he fell in love with the majestic beauty of the Rocky Mountains of Colorado. He felt a powerful sense of deja vu when he first went to Aspen, Colorado in '71. John and his then wife Annie left LA. They bought some property and built a sprawling home in Aspen. John's endearment for his new homeland was commemorated in the song Starwood in Aspen. He described the place as a Rocky Mountain paradise.
Rocky Mountain paradise.
I think you know where we're going from here. I'm going to talk about the classic Rocky Mountain High. Great story here. As we get into this, further break down the song, do want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear, the glasses. I always jam here. If you're looking for a quality pair of prescription glasses or sunglasses for the very best price, you're going to love Zenni. Up to 80% off regular retail prices compared to other companies. So easy. You just choose your perfect look and then you put in your prescription online and they deliver them right to you. Click on the special info button in the right-hand corner right here. Get a POR deal. Tell them we sent you. Click right here today to get Zenni.
Coming home to a place he'd never been before.
So it was in the summer of his 27th year when John Denver felt a rush of inspiration during the Perseid meteor shower that would prove to be the ultimate watershed moment for this rising superstar. It was a bright, celestial event that was the springboard for John Denver's cherished signature tribute, Rocky Mountain High.
Colorado, Rocky Mountain High.
Now, John gave a vivid account of how Rocky Mountain High took shape. Very cool. On one August evening, John and Annie set out with some friends to go to Williams Lake to watch the first Perseid meteor shower. When they arrived at the lake, the horizon was a little hazy, but by 10 p.m. the sky cleared and it was a perfect moonless night to witness what John Denver called a spectacular display. John had his guitar and a fishing rod with him, and at some point during the meteor shower, he went off by himself in a raft to the middle of the lake, singing his heart out. As he explained in his autobiography, it wasn't as if he was singing to the people back on shore. He was so caught up in the rapture of nature's beauty. He was singing a love song to the mountains, literally to the mountains, and to the heavenly sky around him. Eventually, John came back to the campsite, and everyone had drifted off to nap before the meteor shower was supposed to commence. Now, around midnight, John got up and found an open spot to relieve himself, actually. The area by the aspen trees that surrounded the lake was dark, but nearby was a clearing that was blanked by a shadow from the starfall.
From the starlight, it's softer than a lullaby.
John recalled there was so much light from the stars above, it created a noticeable difference between the clearing and everywhere else. The starlight seemed to form its own landscape. It wasn't long after that the show began. The first shooting star put John and Annie and their friends in a state of awe.
Rocky Mountain High.
And then another meteor went smoking by with a tail that blazed a trail across the sky. Then it quickly burned out. The spectacle, it blew their minds. In his lyrics, it recreated the experience. He compared those electrifying moments to raining fire in the sky.
I've seen it rain and fire in the sky.
For weeks thereafter, John continued to work on Rocky Mountain High while the song worked on him, actually, evoking thoughts of how his life had unfolded to this point. Breaking away from the smog, the chaos, and the superficiality of LA, John poured his heart into the meaning of the Rocky Mountain High, and it became very personal to him, writing about how the mountains transformed him like being born again. They're finding the key to every door.
You might say he found the key for every door.
Rocky Mountain High was a diary expressed in the third person, portraying John Denver's reinvigorated real-life character in his Ecological manifesto, frustrated by the apathy of his fellow man. Now his life is full of wonder, but his heart still knows some fear of a simple thing he cannot comprehend.
Of a simple thing he cannot comprehend.
While they try to tear the mountains down to bring in a couple more people, more scars upon the land.
More people, more scars upon the land.
The line about bringing more people and more scars across the land was John's opposing viewpoint on the timely debate about bringing the Olympics to Colorado. It's one of many powerful passages in Rocky Mountain High. Although the inspiration for Rocky Mountain High seemed to come quickly to him, it actually took about 9 months to complete the song, full on. The finishing touch came with the discovery of the song's heartwarming melody. Was conceived by John's trusted friend and bandmate, Mike Taylor. Taylor ascended quickly at a young age in the music business, playing lead guitar for several notable singers, including the great Joni Mitchell. He also co-wrote and co-arranged other John Denver gems, The Eagle and the Hawk. There was also Denver's first #1 single, Sunshine on My Shoulders.
Sunshine on my shoulder.
Now, like Denver, Mike Taylor, who actually passed away in 2010, he was a preservationist who strongly believed in protecting U.S. forests and historical landmarks. Rocky Mountain High came to fruition when Taylor played a guitar lick that he'd come up with, and suddenly John Denver realized the potential of the spiritual song that he had been piecing together all this time. Now, the original plan for John's fifth album was to title the record Mother Nature's Son, after the Beatles song of the same name. But the cathartic anthemic power of the track Rocky Mountain High greatly altered that plan. John Denver decided to change the sequencing and, the title of the LP to Rocky Mountain High, with the album's namesake as the underlying theme behind this record. A stellar lineup of musicians played on Rocky Mountain High, produced by Milton Akin. Of course, John Denver delivered his consummate lead vocal on the track. He played the sixth string. Mike Taylor was on lead guitar, Dick Niss on the bass. There was Frank Owens on piano, Gary Chester on drums. And then picking the banjo was none other than the late Eric Weisberg, who also played the contemplative steel guitar parts on the recording of Rocky Mountain High. Just beautiful. Of course, Weisberg was most famous for his collab with Steve Mandel on a Grammy Award-winning rendition of Dueling Banjos. A little side note here on their version of Dueling Banjos. It was a #1 instrumental single on the Billboard Hot 100 in '72, of course spawned by its placement in a very memorable scene in the movie Deliverance. Dueling Banjos was actually composed by Arthur Guitar Boogie Smith. Interestingly enough, when Dueling Banjos was used in Deliverance, it was done so without Smith's permission. And Smith actually sued the movie company for unauthorized use of that song, and he won. So when Rocky Mountain High was released in the summer of '72, it inspired and divided listeners. The single instantly resonated with the top 40 radio audiences in America and Canada. It shot to #9 on the Billboard Hot 100, went to #8 on the Canadian pop chart. But it was met with resistance from some radio programmers who concluded that a song called Rocky Mountain High had to be about smoking dope. Of course. A good number of stations actually banned the song, and it was placed on a cautionary list by the FCC until an exasperated John Denver explained that the high in Rocky Mountain High was not drug-induced. Denver chose the word high to describe the exhilarating sense of peace that he only experienced while in the Rockies. Man, you can't make this stuff up. Self-righteous gatekeepers also unjustly pointed at the lyric in verse 3 of Rocky Mountain High, and they say that he got crazy once and he tried to touch the sun. He lost a friend but kept the memory.
And he lost a friend but kept the memory.
That stanza is a nod to John's lifelong fascination with flight and an homage to one of Denver's close friends from Minnesota that came to visit him in Colorado, and he died in an accident while riding John's motorcycle. Denver elaborated that the paranoia over Rocky Mountain High was obviously created by people who had never seen or been to the Rocky Mountains. You know, if you've ever been there, you have felt the elation, the celebration of life or joy in living that one gets when you observe something wondrous, is what he said.
Grace in every step you take.
Actually, in 85, John Denver would go head-to-head against what he believed was government censorship in congressional hearings with the PMRC, Parents Music Resource Center. Opposing the labeling of record albums, the organization deemed morally questionable.
May I be very clear that I'm strongly opposed to censorship of any kind in our society or anywhere else in the world.
Rocky Mountain High has come a long way from the FCC scrutiny and sporadic radio banning that happened in 72. It's become a pop culture anthem of Americana that made John Denver one of the most beloved entertainment icons of his generation. By 1974, John Denver was solidly one of America's best-selling performers. And then as the decade progressed, his popularity transcended radio and records. You know, he started to capitalize on his effusive, wholesome image. Broadcast networks wanted John Denver on the tube as often as possible. Actually, in the 73 to 74 season, ABC created the John Denver Show, a variety program of comedy skits and live music.
No sale for punks like you. Well, Dad, maybe I could change.
The Rocky Mountain Christmas Special, it was hosted by Denver, that was created in 75 and became the highest rated ABC show at that time. It attracted over 60 million viewers. John Denver's larger-than-life image hit the big screen in 1977 when he co-starred with the legendary comedian George Burns in the movie Oh, God.
Why, that guy at the Times kept looking at me like I was some kind of a lunatic, and I felt like one.
In 1979, John Denver teamed up with the Muppets for another Christmas TV special. John Denver and the Muppets, Christmas Together, which is part of some of my fondest childhood memories, as well as that Christmas album that they did together.
2 turtle doves and a partridge in a pear tree.
Denver's run of pop hits stalled over 7 studio albums released in the 80s, though, with the exception of Shanghai Breezes that peaked at number 31 on the Billboard Hot 100. Actually went all the way to the top of the AC chart. He wasn't on the radio as much in the 80s, but he was still a fixture in the media. He actually hosted the Grammy Awards in 83 and 84.
And you'll like this. She's been described as the woman God made to show other women how to dance in high-heel shoes.
Times have certainly changed. October 12th, 1997 was a tragic day in rock history. John Denver died when his home-built aircraft crashed into Monterey Bay near Pacific Grove, California.
Country rock singer died after the experimental plane he was piloting crashed into the Pacific just after takeoff.
Flying was one of John Denver's biggest passions. He likely inherited that love from his father. John's dad taught him how to fly a plane in the mid-70s. It was the olive branch that repaired the strained relationship between Henry Jr. and Henry Sr. The reconciliation was at its zenith when John and his father co-hosted an award-winning TV special in 1980 called The Higher We Fly, The History of Flight.
This is John Denver inviting you to climb aboard and join us for a trip that can only be described as far out.
I suppose if John could speak to us from the afterlife, he would tell us not to weep for him, that he died doing what he truly loved to do.
Tell you what, I really admire anybody that sets out to do something and goes for it and does it.
I don't know where Rocky Mountain High would rank on a scale of the highest musical vibrations that the ear can experience. I know that classical music and certain choral music raises the human spirit to incredible levels. We read about that in Science. Personally, I have to say that Rocky Mountain High has to be extremely high on my vibration scale. There aren't many songs that I can think of that pass it up. From the first few notes of that jangly guitar to the last 60 seconds where John Denver's voice takes us to a level of beauty that I can't even comprehend or describe here.
I've seen it rain fire in the sky.
I mean, it's not often that a song describing the Earth's most majestic mountains and the incomparable ecstasy of nature actually surpasses that visual masterpiece. It does here.
Friends around the campfire and everybody.
Every time I hear John Denver sing this perfect song, I can barely sing along due to the enormous lump in my throat. It's what music is meant to do. Transport us to a higher plane, and I'll be damned if John Denver doesn't do that in spades. I love this song. I'll never forget when the song, it came on the radio once when I was riding with my dad in his truck. I was a little kid. We had just heard a rock song by like Boston, I think. He was flipping through stations and he stopped on Rocky Mountain High. It just started. And I sat there, I was trying to be cool, and I said, "Dad, turn the station. This is so dumb." Never forget it. He looked at me, serious at first. Then he smiled and he said, "Music does not get more perfect than this. Just sit back and take it in." My dad didn't care about looking cool to me. He knew he was hearing something special, especially his vocal right here. I mean, it's just heart-wrenchingly pure. The legacy of John Denver's Rocky Mountain High was further memorialized on March 12, 2007. This is when Colorado's Senate passed a resolution that made John's trademark hit one of Colorado's 2 official state songs, sharing the honor with its predecessor, Where the Columbines Grow.
Where the columbines grow.
John Denver, he wasn't perfect, and well, none of us are. But his music and his persona represented a throwback to an innocent time and place. An era when nothing was more fulfilling and enrapturing than a walk in quiet solitude through a forest or across a bubbling stream. Basking in the serenity of a clear blue mountain lake.
The serenity of a clear blue mountain lake.
It's sad that some people have never experienced that kind of high. But John Denver did, and he captured it perfectly. He created a song that shared his happiness with us. For John Denver, his high was the Rocky Mountains of Colorado. But we should all strive to find a special place that speaks to us the way Aspen did to John Denver.
Rocky Mountain High.
I mean, it's a richness of spirit that money cannot buy. You can't put a price on it. And I might add, summarize eloquently in John Denver's last chorus of Rocky Mountain High. Though he'd be a poorer man if he never saw an eagle fly. Rocky Mountain High.
Rocky Mountain High.
I love this song so much. Leave us a comment about John Denver and this perfect pop song, Rocky Mountain High. Do you love this song? Why or why not? Are you lying to us? Let us know your thoughts on the story, the memories of this song. What other songs have high musical vibrations for you? Let's have a great discussion below. If you dig our content, make sure to subscribe below so you never miss out on our videos. We'd love to have you. Make sure to check us out on Patreon. Get your zennies up here. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.